With any dream, the wind won't always be at your back, the sun won't always be shining, and some rain is going to fall. American Family Insurance is like a good, solid roof that you can trust to protect your biggest dreams. With plans that could save you up to 23% when you bundle your home and auto. Also, you can continue to dream fearlessly, no matter what comes your way. American Family Insurance. Get a quote or find an agent at amfam.com.
Visit amfam.com to learn how discounts may apply to you. American Family Mutual Insurance Company assigned its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove. And once again, Jason, the super producer, is still on sick leave. You know, he is getting better though. And like always, he says, tell everybody he's thinking he's counting down the days. He can't wait to get back on the show. In fact, he's texting me right now about some show stuff. So hopefully, and within the next couple of weeks, he will make his triumphant return. In the meantime, I want to give a shout out to our good buddy Phil Garrett, who is stepping up and doing some behind the scenes work for the show. Finally got our theme music back in and cleaning up some of the audio. So Phil has stepped up and been huge. And going forward, I think we'll be able to do some pretty cool things. Phil has a lot of experience in the film and entertainment business, so we might have some really cool things coming thanks to Phil. So I also want to remind everybody that if you have an experience that you'd like to share with us, you can get a hold of us on our Facebook pages, the From the Shadows podcast page or the After the Shadows forum page. You can find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author or the From the Shadows podcast Instagram page. Sorry about that. Or you can email us on our website, the From the Shadows podcast, which today's guest did, but it fell through the cracks because as I'm texting with Jason right now, he has not checked that email address for a little bit since he's been sick, which is understandably so. So if you have emailed us and you haven't heard from us, that's why. So we're going to work on catching up with that now that Jason is feeling a lot better. And then I do want to give a quick shout out to all of our European listeners because I was a co-writer on a song that got released in Norway a couple weeks ago called Diamond in the Rough by the country singer Caitlin Palm. And I can see that quite a few, I know it has to be some of our listeners checking out that song that follow us on social media. I can see where the stuff's been streaming from. And, I know if somebody's streaming Diamond in the Rough from Slovenia, it's because they heard it on the show, probably not because they know who Caitlin is in Norway. But I could be wrong, but I appreciate it. Caitlin appreciated it. The song's doing really well. And, hey, if you haven't checked it out, go find it on Spotify or any of the streaming services and show Caitlin some support. She's an independent country artist and it's tough out there. So, but back to our guest who better late than never is coming to us via social media because I think he got tired of waiting to see if we'd return an email. So welcome to the show, Gary. Welcome to the From the Shadows podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And don't worry about the delay. I knew what was going on, so I just wanted to double check my sources and make sure that something didn't get too far lost in there.
Well, I appreciate your patience, and I'm glad you reached out, especially after talking to you. I think you have some really cool stuff to share with our listeners, and let's just get into it.
Okay.
Tell us where you the time frame, part of the country, and just some of the events that you experienced as a younger man.
Sure. Well, one of the things, if you'll give me a second to pause for a second. So I appreciate you guys doing this podcast. It's been really fun listening to it. The Wednesday Howlers have been great. I've been listening for about 4 months now, as far as I went back and started finding you guys. And so what I do is I do some corporate training across where I'm at, and I go to different locations and I do different types of training. And some of the places I go to, they're doing really well, and I don't really have to do a whole lot. So I generally come in and I tell them, like, hey, how's my second favorite facility doing? And they'll groan because they're like, well, what's the number one facility? So, but for me, that's my challenge, and they want to know what the number one people are doing. I said, well, I don't want you to be the number one. I want you to be you. I just want you to be better. So for you, you're my second favorite podcast, right? So,
so you want us to be better? Oh my gosh, that is Hey, look, I'll take surprise. I'll take being number two. There you go.
Right, but I don't be the number one, because I don't want you to imitate them. I want you guys to keep being you, and I just encourage you to just keep going, and keep doing what you do, and just be the great you are what you are type of thing. So anyway, that's always
Gary, I listen, me and Jason and the judge and the howler, we all appreciate that, because as you know, as in business, it's tough. You try to do the best you can do, and you're going to have your critics and you're going to have your fans, and we appreciate the fans, and we sometimes there's no pleasing the critics, but we know we do the best we can and try to put out the best show for, there's people that love the way we do our thing.
Yeah, I love it. So. Yeah, I love it too. And my favorite episode is, I forget her name, the cleaning lady. I want to say she was in the Northeast somewhere. She cleaned office space.
Oh, yes, M.
That was by far my favorite episode. It was just great.
Yes, M was a fantastic guest, and I don't want to bring the podcast down, but M got COVID, and it kind of did to her what some other people we know. It kind of really affected her physically, and the last time I spoke to her last July, she wasn't sure she was gonna make it much longer, and which was a real shock to us. And I have not heard from her since. So I'm hoping M is still alive and kicking and with us. And and M, if you do listen, hey, shoot me a text. Okay, I want to hear from you. And but everybody, knew at the time she was going through some health issues, and a lot of people from the podcast family kind of stepped up and donated some stuff for her care.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was great. I mean, she blew me away. And if anybody's a new listener and hasn't heard that was, I think, the Halloween episode, like 2020 maybe. I mean, it's been a while, but yeah. When she told me some of those stories the first time before she came on, I was those are some of the best ghost stories I've ever heard.
They were, and she was just like, this is, and part of my story is kind of like hers in a little bit. It's just kind of life, it just kind of sort of, these things happen. Like, all right, well, that was kind of odd, but now we got to go eat, right? That type of stuff. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it was. Yeah, she was an amazing lady. She is an amazing lady. I will speak about her in the present tense, and hopefully that she is doing all right. But like I said, I have not heard from her for a while, and the last time I spoke to her, it sounded pretty dire. So I mean, I'm hoping that she pulled through.
Okay.
But,
yeah, me too. All right.
So, but yeah, thanks for reminding me that I did want to kind of mention her too. Now that you said that, so because we also had another guest that we mentioned that passed away, and Brian from West Virginia, and that was quite a shock. So Gary, there's no guarantees. So let's make the show as good as it can. And Brian, I know he's listening wherever he's at, and he just got a chuckle out of that because he was great. He had a great sense of humor. He was a good dude. So, and he's sorely missed as well. So, but so Gary, so go ahead, Gary. Sorry to bring it down, but I thought
not a problem. It's my fault. I started it. So
I just thought that was something that needed to be said out there. So,
yeah. All right. So for me, so I graduated on the Oregon coast, a small town called Reedsport. It's like 4,000 people, including the cattle and the deer type of thing. Very small town. Typical small Western town where, as far as like, you got your hunters, you got your fishermen, you got your outdoorsmen overall, you got your four-wheelers, all that fun stuff. There wasn't a whole lot to do in town, so you did most of it out of town in the woods and stuff like that. And this is, I think I said graduated 1986 high school, so that'll tell you my age. And then, so right around the time I was graduating, but I've been out in the woods. Now, for me, I'm not a woodsman, but I've been in the woods. Like my older brother is a hunter and stuff like that. And my cousin was a hunter. My uncle was a hunter, but it just wasn't something for me. Most of my friends were either hunters or outdoorsmen of some nature, and I was just the tag along for the most part. So some of what I'm getting ready to tell you about is I had to take their word for whatever it was going on. That even though I thought it was weird and I hadn't heard of it before, I just, these guys are the ones to know, and I'm just gonna have to take their word for it. So the reason let me go back there. So the reason I contacted you guys, because I've been listening to, I drive around quite a bit for my work, and I just needed something that doesn't, not the news type of thing, right? I wanted to go home and be happy. So,
yeah, exactly.
So I put on, started searching for some podcasts, and yours popped up, and a few other different things of kind of on the side interests that I have. And that one came up. So I started listening to stuff and listening to some of these podcasts, and I'm like, well, I've seen that, I've experienced that, and I didn't know it was that. Some of it I did know. I was like, oh yeah, I knew about that, and I'm a believer in Bigfoot. I don't think it's anything supernatural as far as my view of it, but I don't know enough, and I'm not someone who's going to go buy books and books and books on this stuff. But I do think that there's lots of discoveries to be made out there, and I think this is just I want to say a great ape that is very quiet and very fast. And doesn't like to be sociable with other critters, right? And my personal theory is it also thinks that we are probably apes as well, and that's why it doesn't mess with us a whole lot, because we're just another tribe type thing, right? And I think that's partly why they're half curious with us and then half avoid us. I'm not sure why, but
Well, to be honest, Gary, there's a lot of humans that act like Bigfoot do. They don't want to interact with other humans, and they want to be left alone, and they go in their own space, and they just kind of, hide away. So it doesn't seem that implausible to me that there's another species from the great ape family tree that acts that way. Yeah.
There's times when I've had to tell my kids, I was like, I can't go out right now. If people are out there, I just, I'm not going to do well. So here's the keys to the car. Here's $20. Go buy me a soda and some chips, and come buy whatever you want with the rest. That type of stuff. So. All right. So 1986 is when I graduated. Most of these experiences were between early 80s on up into, I would say, mid 90s ish, that type of thing. Right, I want to say 96 is when I left the Oregon coast, right around there. So, but all right, so I'll start off with I had this friend who was a gal who had some horses, and we were hanging out one time, and we'd gone out to go feed her horses, and I can't remember how it came up, but the horse she had, the mane was braided. And I can't remember how it came up, but I had asked because it wasn't fully braided. It was just partially braided, like halfway down the mane. And I think it was just like, why are you going to finish that braiding, or what's the purpose of the braiding? Does it help with the horse at all and stuff like that? And she said, no. just occasionally people stop by and they want to pet the horse, and then they end up braiding the hair on the horse. And I'm like, that didn't make any sense to me. But why would somebody just walk up and start braiding someone else's pet the hair on the back of it? And apparently that's something that's been known for Bigfoot to do in certain areas. Anyway, that was just one of those okay, I'll take it, whatever you say type of moments. And that was probably one of the earliest memories that I have of dealing with strange things out in the woods, as far as close to human contact. So, and then I'll where I lived all of my life in Oregon anyway, is we lived out on the edge of town, just above a golf course. And where we lived, it was I think of it like a bowl-shaped valley. And then the golf course is the flat of the bottom, so it's kind of a flat valley, but it's a valley where, for the most part, shaped that way. And on the other side of that valley, on the other side of the golf course and the hills over there, was the Umpqua River, and then the ocean was maybe 2 miles away from there. And where we lived, I could see out over both the golf course and back to the back of the valley. And there'd be times during the summer that I'd be sitting out on the deck, and I'd just be watching all the people down at the playing golf and whatnot, because a lot of people that go down there, we know them, small town, see things that are going on. And I remember hearing this very loud knock. It was like a range of three. So it was 1, 2, 3, and then nothing for like 20 minutes. But it sounded like someone was pounding on a hammer, hitting a nail on a board. It was, and it sounded like somebody's building a deck nearby type of thing. And it was really super loud. And for where I'm at, there's about 100 yards to my left you're pretty much going to be entering straight into the woods, a little bit of a break. And then to my right, there's going to be about another maybe 50 yards. You're pretty much straight into the woods as well. But on my left, it sounded like there's 3 homes to my left. And it sounded like someone was doing some construction over there. And, nothing major, but it just seems kind of odd that it was the world's slowest construction site, because it was like 3 knocks, silence for like a good 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. Can't remember exactly how long. 3 knocks, silence, 3 knocks. And I'm just like, somebody is taking their time. I don't know what they're building, but it's taking them forever. So like like me, I'm not in construction. So if I was to do that, I'd be, it's because I've nailed it in the wrong spot and I have to take it out and go cut the board again, type of thing.
I was starting to wonder if you were hearing a state-sponsored construction project going on. That's what was taking so long.
Yeah. 1 laborer and 4 managers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 guys standing. I've done some government work, and yeah, there's 1 person digging and then 4 people standing around watching them. So anyway, that happened quite a good number of years. I remember hearing that a long time. And there was one time I remember I had to go down to the golf course, and I remember I was like, I'm going to look over there and see who's building their deck or doing whatever it is, because they're taking forever doing whatever they're doing. But I had a clear view from there, and no one was building any decks. No one was doing any construction. The windows weren't open. Doors weren't open. Nobody was out in the back. You couldn't hear any saws going, like a skill saw or a hand saw, nothing of that nature. And I just remember thinking it was just very super odd that somebody was building pounding 3, I want to say 3 nails, 3 hammer swings every 20 minutes or so. And yet nothing was happening, and it was happening all summer long for a couple of years. And so I tried to dial in on it. As you can also see the golf course where they fixed the equipment, and they have a bunch of equipment. You can kind of see there's a small road off to the side, probably about 400 yards away from my house. And you can see that might be where that sound would be coming from. But sometimes when the sound happened, I saw the greenskeeper out on the golf course, and there's only 1 employee, and it was just weird, because did they hire someone? Is somebody doing something work over there? So anyway, it was kind of weird to hear those knocks and not have a resolution to it. So that always stuck in the back of my head. And of course, now if you're into Bigfoot, you know about the tree knocks.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm agreeing with you. It's just the one thing that I would say is what's seems to me a little unusual is them happening all day long, like, because you're not talking like it was at night every time. You're talking like during the day, right?
Yeah, and it literally sounded like it was right next door. So it wasn't the echo, and it didn't have that sounds from a distance type of thing. It literally sounded like it was the guy next door. And again, the woods are maybe 100 yards, maybe less than that, from where I was standing.
Wow. And so obviously that had to unnerve you a little bit, that it just kept, because I gotta be honest, if there was noises outside, and I'm standing out, you just might pass it off as something happening in the woods, but for it to happen often enough for you to start taking note and becoming curious, I can imagine. For me, I know how many times it would have to happen for me to start paying attention to it.
Right.
So I can't imagine just hearing it and then having no idea where that's coming from.
Yeah. And of course, it's I think of construction because it sounded just like somebody pounding on a board. So now, not getting curious, a lot of you are going to think I'm pretty stupid by the time I'm done with all these stories, where they're like, you didn't investigate any of this stuff. You're like, well, no, I'm a slow uptake kind of guy. So, from that same the deck of the house, my home house. So I would also occasionally I'd hear the whoops out there, and for me, again, not an outdoorsman, if I was to associate with anything, it would be like a very large owl kind of sound, just a deeper, very, very loud whoop. And I heard, those I heard throughout the summer from the porch of my house. Never associated with anything other than possibly an owl. It didn't sound like a coyote howl or anything like that. It didn't sound like dogs howling or anything like that. It was definitely a whoop, which would, for me, I just thought it was an owl. But that would happen all the time as well. I'd be sitting out on the deck, even with my friends, if we're just being quiet, you would hear this whoop, and nobody blinks an eye, because it's, for us, it's nature noises, right? It's just things in nature.
Yeah, exactly.
So we heard that. I heard that quite frequently. And then, and here's one for you. So as I'm looking out across the golf course onto the far, I call it a hill, because most people would call it like a small mountain, but it's for me, it's a hill, because it's not very, very high, but it's high enough and pretty steep. But I'm looking out across, and we got a lot of pine and evergreen trees out there. And I remember just sitting there, just kind of staring off into space, and I noticed the top of this tree was the whole tree was shaking, but there was no wind, there was no loud noises, no nothing. I'm just looking out across the golf course, and just this singular tree is shaking violently. Kind of not like it was getting ready to fall over or anything like that, but if say like a tornado came through and just started whipping around it, it was just shaking violently. None of the other trees were moving. There was no wind patterns. I don't know if you've ever seen wind go through a tree on the side of a valley, or trees on the side of a valley. Like in the ocean, you can see where the wind is kind of moving. There was none of that, and there was no other noises. It was just a shaking tree. Not sure, And so I had asked one of my friends. I said, "Hey, what's up with I saw this tree shaking the other day, and it was the only one. No wind, no nothing." And a friend of mine said it was probably a deer cleaning off its velvet from its horns. Yeah. And I'm like, well, how big is this deer? Because this was not a small tree, right? I'm like, how big is this deer? And were there like 5 of them? Or what were they doing? And why was it just the one tree? So now we do have elk out there, which would be a big enough animal to possibly shake it. But even then, that elk, it's got to be a really big one. And they tend not to be right where I was looking. They're more inland and up towards the mountains type of thing. And I was just like, that had to have been a massive elk. And of course, now lower part of Oregon has some moose, and I've seen moose that are massive, but you would never see that up there, as far as I know. Again, I'm not a woodsman, but I'm just like, I don't think I've ever seen a moose in our particular part of the country. Elk, we have some, but they're generally not where that tree was shaking. So anyway, so I took it at his words that it was some type of a large deer or elk shaking a tree. trying to get its velvet off, and I'm just like, all right, well, okay, going on. So, again, come to find out, that's something that happens or is known to be happening with Bigfoot. So, again, I understand some of this can be what I've experienced. There might be other explanations, but it seems to me that the pattern seems to be that this is pretty common for other people who've either seen Bigfoot or experienced Bigfoot in that particular name. So, and for me, I'm partly skeptical, but I'm also open that, hey, there's no other explanation for this that points to like a normal small deer shaking a tree, that type of stuff. So,
Well, when you start at, like, because you're talking all in the same area, right? You're talking like you're hearing the whoops, you're hearing the knocks, you're seeing the tree. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not like it's all those things together in the same area add up. You know, it's not like you heard a whoop 30 miles away and you saw a tree 20 miles the other way. You know what I'm saying? It's all right in one area. Like, it starts to add up to be something.
Yeah. And of course, that's like on the edge of town too. So there's people there. There's traffic. There's people wandering around the golf course, and even then on the other side, on one part of the other side of the golf course, there's another neighborhood that's pretty much built into the woods. You know, like people who have like 2-3 acres, maybe a whole acre, and they're just in the woods type of thing. So all right. So and then a couple of times, twice, I had some rocks thrown at me, you know, by unseen forces, we'll just say.
By
So
the deer that
deer.
were getting their velvet on their throat.
He was mad because I couldn't help him, right? So one of my jobs, I've been doing some, I won't say logging. I did some logging, did some brush clearing and stuff like that, basic woodwork. One of the things that we would do is like after you replant the area that you harvested, you come back a little while later and you cut down the shrubs that are growing so that it'll make room for the trees that need to grow up as well. That way the shrubs don't overtake the newly planted trees. So anyway, and you know, a small crew, maybe 2 guys for safety, and you go out there and you just kind of knock down some of the shrubs that are getting too big, and you know, and you're in a big area. So me and a buddy of mine were out there, and we were on the lower end of a valley, and I want to say I'm maybe, if I remember right, maybe 25, 30 yards away from the tree line, and I'm just sitting there taking a break, and all of a sudden this rock comes out of nowhere from behind me, you know, because I'm seeing the arch come down, and this rock lands in front of me about 5-6 feet. And you know, for me, I'm like, where in the world did that come from? Because my buddy is within sight of me, and he's not throwing anything. So I turn around and look, and I'm thinking, well, maybe someone had come down to check in on us, maybe like the foreman or something of that nature, and is messing with me. So I look around, and nobody's there. And if they are, then they're like really like they're hiding, right? And then another one happens, and I'm looking around. I'm like, where in the world is that coming from? And I turn around, hey, who's here? Funny, haha, you know, come on out, you know, let us know what you want. And my buddy was like, who are you talking to? I said, whoever's throwing rocks at me. And he's like, well, it's a bird. I said, what? He said, yeah, birds sometimes if you're near their nest, they'll drop rocks at you. I was like, well, no, this has an arch to it. It's not coming straight down. I said, this has an arch to it, and it's coming from basically behind me. And he's like, yeah, no, it's a bird. So for me, I'm like, well, look up. And there's not a bird in the sky. And I'm like, well, and I point to him, I was like, do you see any birds? He's like, well, they might be in the trees. I'm like, well, I don't hear them making any noises. Like, you know, crows will caw at you, that type of stuff. Nothing's going on. And then he's like, well, maybe it's a squirrel. I'm like, for the height and the arc that rock, those 2 rocks were traveling at, I was like, I think I'm going to need to start up this chainsaw, because that's going to be a really big squirrel that's going to be coming after me.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
As far as I know, you know, unless he's kicking that thing with his back legs, I've never experienced a squirrel heaving something that far. I know that they can do it, right? I've seen them throw stuff out of their nests, but I have never seen anything of that nature the height and the arc and whatnot from a squirrel. Let alone squirrels also, if they're irritated with you, they'll chatter at you, right? They'll try and get you to go away.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know?
usually.
So that was, for me, I'm just like, I had no other explanation. I had to take him at his word. I'm like, all right, well, it's there's got to be some type of an animal for whatever reason throwing it at me. Not hitting me, obviously, but it was still kind of weird. And it's one of those things where you're like, all right, well, I'll just take your word for it and move on. So, and I can't remember if it was the same site or if it was just the same buddy, but I don't know if you've heard about the smells that happen occasionally with a Bigfoot.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So we were down there, and of course, all of a sudden, this massive, overwhelming, putrid smell comes my way, and I just stop and I turn off the chainsaw, and I'm clearing out my nose. I'm just like, holy cow, what is this? And I'm thinking I stepped on something, I cut something, or whatever, and I'm looking around, but it's just normal brush stuff, little myrtle, holly bushes, that type of stuff. And I'm just like, what in the world did I step on? Did I step in some deer excrement? I'm like, what? And I'm looking around, and my buddy again stops, and he's like, what's up? And I said, you smell that? He's like, no. I said, man, it is just really bad. And so he says, well, you probably it's skunk weed. I was like, okay, man, that is horrid. I mean, like, it's like, have you ever driven to a dump when on a hot summer day and the wind's coming your way type of thing? It's worse than that. I've never smelt a dead body before, but from people telling me about that, it was horrible. That's all I can tell you. And it just seemed to kind of come and go in waves. I walked 20 feet away and it was gone. So again, I took my buddy's word for that. And that happened again in another area where I both had rocks thrown at me in some woods. That time, me and my buddy I think we were just like taking his dog out for a walk, letting him go for a run out in the woods and just kind of messing around, passing the time away. And I remember smelling some smells, and I was just like, holy cow, where's that skunk weed at? And my buddy goes, there's no skunk weed up here. That's only down in marshy areas for the most part. And I was like, okay, well, that's the exact same smell I smelled before, and we didn't disturb anything, as far as I know. What's the difference? He's like, maybe he's carrying over from someplace else. I'm like, dude, okay. And again, for me, I had no idea what that was associated with. But again, so in that same instance, a rock was thrown at me. A couple of rocks were thrown at me. Again, the same high arch coming from behind me, in the woods, with trees and brush and whatnot. It wasn't too brushy, but there was plenty of ways for the squirrel to not have very good aim. Right, if he threw it at me, he's more likely going to hit a tree than he was going to hit me. But it was coming from on high, and I remember thinking this guy. At first, I thought my buddy was messing with me, and was just kind of throwing rocks, and because of the previous time. And I look over at him, and another rock throws, and he's in front of me in full view. And I'm just like, well, that's just odd. So then I look up. I'm looking for squirrels. I'm looking for birds that might be agitated that I'm doing something near them. And I'm just like, well, what's going on here? So, and again, I told him what's going on. He's like, yeah, it's a squirrel or a bird. I'm like, do you see any birds up there? Do you hear any squirrels? And we're just like, well, but again, I had total ignorance of the whole situation. And I'm just like, all right, well, I guess you'll take you at your word for that. So that was my rock throwing and smells incidences. And I tell you, that smell, I don't ever care to smell that ever again. It's horrible. So.
And I'm sure it probably, like, it sounds like you can pick, or how should I say that? It sounds like you're experiencing it all over again every time you talk about it. Like that.
Yeah. I can see it in my head. Yeah.
like that smell is in your nostrils as you tell the story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I so before we go on, I just want to, like, how close do you think you had to be to smell one of these creatures? I mean, and is that why you got rocks thrown at you, because you were that close that you were smelling them, and then they're like, hey, we need to get these guys away from me, and they start throwing rocks? Or
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it. I think they're trying to, like, like you would do the same thing if an animal's near you. Like you throw
Yeah.
something, you're not armed, you just want it to go away and kind of scare it off. I think that's probably similar to what they were doing.
Now, so you're ignorant at it about what it is at the time, but thinking back, like how does that make you feel that you could have been that close
Yeah.
and not even know? I mean, if there's no if you don't smell it and it doesn't throw and a rock doesn't go whizzing by your head, you'd have no idea
Oh,
that
yeah.
you were.
No. Yeah.
So that when I hear those stories, that's what really creeps me out the most is how stealthy these things are for their size.
Hmm.
That that you know you might have been able to pass away that maybe there's a dead animal sitting somewhere until a rock goes by your head, because that's like I said before, stuff starts adding up, and it's like, okay, you put one and one together, um, what's the conclusion? And if it doesn't throw a rock, you might have just thought, well, we smelled something dead,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
it's just that extra thing that happens that pushes that explanation to the back, and like, okay, what is it? What is this really now? Um, so it makes me wonder then why, if they think that I wonder if they think we can sense them the way they can sense us, like, because I'm sure they smell us as soon as we're within whatever hundreds of yards,
Yeah.
especially with the wind, and see at night, it's the whole thing, them ducking behind trees at night. People have caught, on the infrared cameras. It's almost like they think we can see at night as well as they can too. So um, it goes all back. It might go all the way back to your opening statement about, you think, they just think we're the same as them and they're trying to stay away from us.
Yeah.
So,
So the next one is, I don't know if your listeners know about the structures, but out in the woods, you'll see, the best way I can describe it, if you've never seen it, is think of like an Indian teepee without the skin around it, and you just got that frame, right? So you take that and put it up into the trees. So not on the ground, just take it in that diamond format, and put it up into the trees, and then weave it into the trees. So basically, maybe also think of like you built it on the ground, and then the trees grew up and took that teepee with it, right? So that's kind of sort of what I've seen in there. And I've seen a couple of those. And again, so we're out there. I think one time we were just thinning out some trees where we're just kind of getting rid of the dead trees, or getting rid of the trees that shouldn't be growing there for that particular company that owned the land. They just want us to go in and thin something out. And so we're going in there, and one time I just look up and I was just like, well, that's kind of odd that this small tree, smaller than, you could probably wrap your hand around it type of size, was woven at an angle in that particular teepee fashion. And there was at least 4 or 5 woven through there. And I remember seeing 1 or 2 that only had like maybe 3 in that were woven. We're talking woven in between both vertically and then branches as well. So it's, how uneven everything is in the woods. It's like it was been woven into the tree line, I guess. I'm not sure how to describe that, but basically, if you threw a stick that direction, you're going to hit a tree, and it's not going to weave in between anything. Um, and so I've seen that, and I remember looking at my buddy, and I said, look at how weird this is. And my friend was like, yeah, it must have been the wind blew it there. I'm like, okay, how did it weave through there? Because I know what happens when, say you threw a spear down in the woods. It's gonna, it's not gonna do that. It's not gonna get stuck woven in between misaligned trees, let alone branches and everything else. Uneven branches. Some are higher, some are lower, and that type of stuff. And at first I thought, okay, well, maybe. I was just like, it just seems kind of odd that maybe one in a bazillion might maybe do that, depending on speed and reflection and deflection, all that fun stuff. And I was just like, all right. So, and I saw another one that was more complicated later on. I can't remember if it was in the same site or not, but it was the same buddy later on. but it was a 5 or 6 of them trees that were woven up in there. And I remember thinking, no, there's no way the wind did this. Even if a tornado came through here, that ain't going to happen. And then some people say, well, it's an Indian teepee. I'm like, well, no, I think Indians know what type of stuff to use, and these are not something that you would want to use for a stiff structure, right? So it was anyway. So I took them at their word that somebody, quote unquote, somebody had been there and had done that as like a hunting marker or something like of that nature. And I'm like, okay, well, I could kind of see that. But the height that you would need, you would have to either have some tree climbing gear, or you would have to have a ladder and a lot of time.
Now, I got to ask, because I have never heard of a tree structure like that up off the ground, like up in the tree. Have you heard that on any other show that you've heard, that you've listened to, doing some research? Because I've never heard that. I've only ever heard of them on the ground.
No, I've never. I don't recall ever seeing any one of them on the ground. So when people talk to them, I assume that they've all been up in the trees, because that's all that I've ever experienced is up in the trees.
Yeah, I've never heard of one up in a tree. So that is, to me, I mean, you're like one of a kind in my book, unless I just not. I mean, I honestly have never heard that. And I've been sent lots of pictures, and none of them are up in a tree. They're all on the ground.
Okay. Well, take a trip out to the Oregon coast and just go wandering around, and for me, you might find.
Oh, it sounds great. I mean, run into something that stinks, that's going to throw rocks at me. Man.
Yeah. So now there was one. I remember this one vividly. We were going to go cut down a whole plot of land, and we had to cut a trail down to where we were going. And I remember it's you're going down a pretty steep little I say mountain, mountain for a better word, lack of a better word, but you're going down, and all of a sudden, it'll kind of level off a little bit, and then it'll go back down to a decline. So I remember one time we were cutting it down, and I just happened to look over, and I saw the tree structure again, and I looked down below. There was a small mound in there as well, and I remember looking at it. It's like, I don't remember seeing mounds in the other ones. And of course, I'm still stuck in, it's somebody camping. It's a hunter's type of markings. That way they can find it in the woods, that type of stuff. And now we also had GPS. So, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't too expensive either. So there's lots of GPS out there. So why hunters wouldn't want to be using that and instead using that. So another option might be like drug runners, right? It's an indication of where their nearby field or farm is. And for you to stay away, or it's an indication for you to probably stay away. But I'm like, but there's no directional, like, which way would I stay away from? So anyways, but there was a mound underneath this particular one. And I remember looking at it, and I was like, again, I've never seen a mound in underneath any of these structures before. So I called my buddy, said, hey, check this out. It should be perfectly flat right here, but there's this mound, and it's got them little markers. I called them markers for him. And he looks at it and goes, yeah, must be an Indian burial ground. He says, don't touch it. We'll move on, and we'll just mark it later. I'm like, okay, moving on. Indian burial ground. And I'm like, later on I'm thinking, wait a minute. All that effort for one particular dead person? I was just like, why wouldn't you, even then, I'm not too up on Indian cultures, but I'm pretty sure they at least marked their graves in some form or fashion. And, it just seems really, really rather odd as far as a burial mound out literally in the middle of the woods. And it would have been the woods for them as well. You just do this burial mound thing, and it happened to also be near a drug runner's or a hunter's marking sign. So come to find out, I guess, I forget the guy's name. He's over in Washington. Not Moneymaker, but the Olympia.
Oh, Cliff.
Somebody had mentioned that they had found a bunch of mounds like that, and that they think it might be Bigfoot burying their dead. One of the ways that Bigfoot might bury their dead. So anyway, when I heard that, I was just like, okay, well, I've seen that. So, because it's It just really stands out for me overall. And when I heard that they were talking about mounds associated, and again near or underneath the structure, I was like, yeah, I've seen that. And again, total ignorance, just all right, Indian burial plot, and don't disturb it. Just keep moving on and respect the dead, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure your listeners would be like, dude, this guy's the dumbest woods person ever.
Well, hey, look, you only know what you know, and if you're hanging out with other people that are completely denying that it's anything but what they consider a rational explanation, what are you supposed to do? Argue with them? I mean, you only know what you're seeing and what you've experienced.
And then we'd go driving around in the woods quite a lot sometimes, just wasting time. And I remember a couple of times I asked my buddies where you'd be driving along, and all of a sudden this single small tree, the sapling, would be broken and bent over towards the road. And I remember thinking, like, what's causing that? And one friend said that it was like a bear wanted some of the leaves or berries on that particular sapling, and it broke when the bear got it, or a deer tugged it down and it broke, that type of stuff. And I'm looking at I'm taking that. I'm like, okay, I think there's other things to eat, but that looking at the young sapling tree, that normally they bend, they don't break unless there's force against it, type of thing. And so I'm kind of arguing with him on that. It's like, well, no, a bear could have just pulled the entire tree down and that type of stuff. And so they were like, well, it just is what it is. I'm like, okay. And we stopped at one, and I'm looking at it, and there's like, it's not a tree that has berries on it. And if I remember right, it had some small leaves on it, which, of course, if animals are eating it, then that's fine. I have no idea what they eat. I just know that I know they do eat berries and stuff like that. But I was just like, it just really stood out as very odd for me that it's happened so frequently on a lot of these roads. And let alone there's other sources that are easier to get to than messing with these sapling trees. And then breaking them. But there's other trees that are real similar nearby that go untouched, right? So, and again, maybe the animal was just walking by, just kept passing on and found something else farther down the road, while its stomach was satisfied, that type of thing. So I rationalized it away. But I challenged them a little bit later on, and was just like, it just seems too odd and too random for this. And so one friend offered up that he remembered that sometimes people, it's a mile marker for people that when they either built the road, or if you're driving along, about every mile or so, you would just stop and find a good tree to break. That way, you've got X amount of miles to go coming back, or, hey, this is 1 mile, this is 2 mile, that type of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, that would make sense. But again, there's other ways to do that, especially if it's state-run road, then they've already got mile markers out there anyway, and this is still happening on these roads. So, and again, that seems to be, and I've seen it out when we're after we've made a trail in, say, an area that we're going to get ready to go log or cut down. We've made a trail, and next thing you know, we come back down there, and there's a tree, a small tree that's been broken and bent across the trail. And, for me, I'm like, that's not a mile marker, right? Let alone, so it's just weird stuff like that. And come to find out, apparently, from some of these Bigfoot, I'll say researchers, hunters, they find that quite a lot, especially if you're traveling it quite frequently. You'll see that out there. A lot of trappers report that as well, from what I'm hearing on some of these podcasts. And I want to say someone from your podcast had said that as well. So I've seen that. That's kind of weird for me, especially growing up with it. It was just kind of like, I've seen that all the time. So, and then so with that, there was one time I was with my buddy, and again we were just out in the woods walking and letting the dog run, and we're just kind of wasting time. And all of a sudden, we kind of got, I don't want to say separated, but a good small distance between us. I was uphill a little bit, probably about 10, 15 yards above him, and he was down below with his dog, and we're just kind of meandering around. And I remember just walking by, and I was like, well, that bush looks kind of odd. So I go over and look at it a little bit, and it's think of a half moon shape, about 9-10 feet wide. So it's from my perspective, it was an upside down elongated U, the letter U. I guess it could be an N too, but think of it like a giant oval, but cut in half lengthwise. And it wasn't a bush; it was a series of trimmed out or broken, like think of like a bird's nest, right? A bird's collecting all these sticks and stuff like that, and they're not just laid down on each other; they are literally woven together, so that it makes a wall. And it was about, I want to say it was about 4 feet high, if memory serves. And it was made out of, I know I'm gonna butcher the types of bushes, but it was like a holly bush, crepe myrtle, smaller bushy things that turn more into woods, but have like green waxy leaves and that type of stuff. And in the lower, it wasn't just plain dirt. There was grass and moss as a bed, and it had been used. Like the grass that grew there was bent over as if something had been sleeping there. And I've seen deer beds, I've seen bear beds and stuff like that, and I've seen the size of those. But this one, literally, it was 9-10 feet long. It was very long and woven together in a giant U shape, and it had been used. So I told my friend this, and I said, "Hey, what in the world's doing this?" And he looks up at it and he goes, "It must be a deer bed." And I'm describing it from up above, and he's like, does it this and that? And I was like, "Deer bed, sure, okay." It's a massive deer because it's not just like if you've ever seen deer beds, they'll sit next together, but they only crush the area that they're kneeling or they're laying down on. So you'll have maybe the size of the deer, and that there's mama deer and a couple of babies that you can see the size of the babies because their little spot that they're sleeping in is smaller than the rest. But the entire thing was matted down. So whatever was sleeping on there was like they were sleeping side by side and back to back and whatnot, which is not the normal that I'd ever seen before. And so I just kind of laughed and I said, "No, I don't think it's a deer because this is a massive deer." And so for him, he was like, "Well, maybe it's an elk." I was like, "I've seen elk too, and this is bigger. This is longer than an elk. This is the depth of it is going to be a little bit wider than an elk as well. And plus, there's no hoof prints nearby. There's no nothing, and let alone it's woven together. And I don't know how many deer can weave together sticks, but it's like, let alone hair, right?"
Well, maybe after they get done pulling Santa's sleigh, then they start weaving for the off season. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't. Once again, that trying to make sense, trying to make a rational explanation out of something that doesn't work.
So I even thought, well, maybe it's somebody out there growing marijuana, and they just built a little like a blind type of thing. But there's like no sign of human. There's no litter. There's no like nails. There's no string. There's no nothing. Whoever it was, like they literally walked in and walked out with everything as it was. So, but again, why are you going to make a 9-foot, 10-foot one when you could make a small one quickly and easily and not draw any attention to yourself because you're just going to be another bush in the woods. So that was my only rationalization, was somebody was out there and they were doing that for some particular reason, and maybe they were just tamping down all that moss and grass. So apparently, and I've had that thought in my head for years. Occasionally, pop up and say, I still wonder what that was, and what could do that, because a bear can't weave, right? Not even the Berenstein bears could weave that, right?
I gotta be honest. I could go out there and I couldn't weave
it. Yeah.
Just so you know. Just so you know, I would make a good Bigfoot. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah. So my friend was just like, it's just an animal's nest. I'm like, well, okay. And so again, taking them at their word for it, because I got nothing to offer other than I saw it. That's all I know. And then of course, for me now, listening to some of these podcasts, the Olympia project, apparently the short story is some surveyor was out there, found a bunch of these weird, now theirs were completely encircled, nests of woven sticks and twigs and whatnot. Now, mine was, again, it was only half moon, so maybe I moved in on when they were halfway through construction. I don't know. But when they described it, I've never seen a fully round one. I only saw the one half moon shape. So, but it's still, again, kind of weird, especially for being out in the woods. For the most part, nobody should be there unless you're getting ready to go cut something down or hunt something. And it was just stood out. All right. And then, growing up as well. So I would say after 86, I was working for a logging crew, which, nothing I really had interest in, but it was a job and I knew how to do some of it. Some of it you don't have to know a whole lot. You just have to be willing to possibly lose your life for a tree. So I was working for this one particular crew with a buddy of mine who they just needed us for like a week or two for just some additional grunt labor help. And it's not a crew that I really I wouldn't have seen them in social circles. They were not the nicest people in the world, and they weren't the most polite people. They were a ragtag.
Sounds like the perfect guys to go out in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of chainsaws and axes. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah. So, I mean, they were nice to me, but I just knew of their reputation. And for me, it was, I'm in it for the money. I'm only going to do it for a little while. I've got my friend here and he knows them better than I do. But yeah, I'm not going to be hanging out with them after work at any point. Matter of fact, we didn't even drive in with them. Normally, like you drive in with a crew truck, we drove in separate vehicles. And we're just like, I'm just not interested in these guys. But anyway, so we pulled in one morning and we're getting all ready, and all of a sudden I noticed on the I would call it a cut, but basically we cut into the side of a hill or a mountain, and to make the road, and then you cut away part of that so that you can make a landing and stuff like that. So you've got it still goes higher up than where we were at. We were cut into the side of the hill, and which means that there's no trees, there's no debris, there's no ground moss, there's no ground cover. It's all freshly exposed dirt. And that particular area is more like kind of like that clayish type of dirt where it's not quite brown, but it's not quite gray either. So it's kind of that tan feel. So anyway, so it was fully exposed, and it's a good, I would say maybe 40 yards wide and about 10, 15 yards high before it gets into natural forest and stuff like that. And I noticed that this particular crew had piled up over near there, and they were looking at stuff, and they were kind of pointing and whatnot. And I'm just leaving them alone. And my buddy goes over there, and he comes back, and he's shaking his head, and he's like, "These fools." And I'm like, "Dude, you want to be quiet about that." He's like, "They think they got Bigfoot prints right over there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I go over there and look at it, and he goes, "Don't look, it's just a bear." I'm like, "Okay, well, either way, I am going to go look." And so I go over there and look, and from my experience, bears don't have big toes. They don't have that arch, a big toe down to a small pinky toe type of thing. I do know they have toes, but it's more of a rounded O instead of a kind of a curve. But I was looking at it, and I was like, and it wasn't the full print. So it's basically, think about trying to walk up the side of a mountain, right? Your heel is going to be out in the air while your toes are making contact, and you're trying to push up and off, right? So that's basically what I saw, was basically the front half of a Bigfoot's foot. And it was about 6 feet up from the lowest spot in that particular side of the hill. And there was another one down below where it hit edge. So it was climbing kind of up at an angle. So it was basically, from my view, it was traveling from the lower left to my upper right. But there was only 2 prints. So the bottom one had a right-sided footprint, and the next one up, which was about 5-6 feet up, was the left side of the foot, or left foot. And of course, my buddy was just like, "Well, it's a bear," and it was going up the mountain, right? But for me, I'm like, how long was this bear? It just didn't make any sense to me, because again, I don't know the difference between some of these other animals, and I'm just looking at it. I was like, "Well, that doesn't look like a bear. It looks like a human foot." And it was pretty obvious, and it was pretty well impacted into the ground. But there was no, I know they say that bears can walk in their own footprints type of thing, but this one, apparently this bear only has two feet, and it's only got a left and a right, and they didn't. It would have had to have landed each foot exactly in the exact same spot in order to not see the double print. Like, so if we were to walk and trying to backtrack type of thing, we wouldn't exactly hit the exact spot. We could get real close, but anyway. So he was telling me that it was a bear and nothing to see, and let's move on. But I distinctly remember thinking, well, bears have four legs, not two, and whatever it was, if this was a bear, then where are the other two prints? Let alone how long was this bear in order to only make two prints? So, buddy of mine was just like, don't worry about it. Trust me, it ain't no Bigfoot. And I was like, all right, well, let's get to work, right?
Wow. I mean, you fun. I can't believe you didn't have one buddy this whole time is like, hey man, what do you think? Like, you've been hanging out with the wrong people. Like,
well, I would say
sure.
like maybe if you divide up, maybe a third are skeptics, or just don't care. A third believe, and a third really are like, no, there's nothing out there that it's all hoaxes and stuff like that. So, but yeah, out there, most of them were like, yeah, no, there's there's nothing like that. So. And then, so this is one of the same buddies. He lived on the edge of town as well in a different section, but they lived at the end of the road, and literally like maybe 15 yards behind their house, you're straight into the woods. And they were the second to the last house. And we were over there, and we're going to go up into, and it's on a hill. We were going to go up into the back part of his wooded area, and I can't remember what we're going to do, but we're probably just going to go mess around. Who knows? Go cause trouble. For something in the woods. And I remember we were walking out the back door, and I heard this baby cry at the neighbor's, which would be the very last house. And it was crying like all get out. And I looked at my friend, and I was like, did one of the girls next door who I knew, it's like, did someone over there have a baby? And he was like, no, not as far as I know. And I said, well, where's that baby? What's the baby sound coming from? He's like, well, maybe they got visitors or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that's possible. But nobody was home because, we knew that because they had, I think it was I don't think it was a Sunday, but we knew they weren't home. But so I was thinking, oh, maybe somebody stayed home and they were taking care of the angry baby. And then I was like, well, that just doesn't make any sense. And then we get up the hill a little bit farther away, and I hear the baby cry again. And it sounds like it's like right next to us for the most part. And I'm just like, dude, what is with that baby cry? And why can we still hear it from where we're at? And he's like, maybe it's one of the birds. I'm like, is there a parrot nearby? Did one escape from someplace? So what's going on? And he was like, no, it's a crow. Crows can do that. I'm like, okay, well, I've never heard of that before. It would be in that same range, but this is different than an angry crow cawing at you, or even the rhythm was a baby cry. The sound was a baby cry. I mean, if there was a parrot, then it was a really good mimicker of whatever was going on. But it was definitely near us, and it was, I don't want to say following us, but it was as close to us as it was before when we were right next to the house, right? So that just really seemed kind of odd to me. And come to find out, apparently, like other people have reported being out in the woods and hearing a baby cry, and that's been associated with Bigfoot as well. And now, I couldn't tell you one way or the other, but they do talk about they can imitate certain sounds, which would be fine.
Well, we had a guest on that heard a baby crying out in the woods, and he was talking about it because he was associated it with a bunch of other Bigfoot activity, and we talked about it on the podcast, and we had people reach out, and one person in fact said, well, why would you think it was Bigfoot mimicking a baby? Why couldn't it be a baby Bigfoot? If we think they're human-like, why wouldn't a baby Bigfoot cry like human? I'm like, okay, all right. I mean, they kind of dressed me down a little bit. Like, why would you just think? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know any more than, just like you're telling the story. We're guessing of what the possibilities are, and somebody else threw out that what if what this guy was hearing wasn't a Bigfoot at all, and it was a demon or a demonic spirit trying to draw him closer. And I'm like, holy smokes! Now we're in a whole nother different realm,
Yeah.
But yeah, look, you hear a baby crying out where there's not supposed to be a baby. Either somebody left a baby there or there's something making that noise. Now, whether it's somebody mimicking an actual, baby of a primate that sounds like a human baby. I mean, I don't know, but it's like you said, it's weird. It shouldn't have been there.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? Again, some weird stuff. And I do remember asking the family had a gal that was in my grade, and I remember it must have been high school, because I remember going up to her and saying, "Hey," and it was a really clean conservative family. So I was just like, "Hey, did someone there have a baby or anything like that?" And she's looking at me like, "No, my parents are a little bit too old for that." And I said, "Well, did any of your sisters have a kid?" And of course, she's like, "No, like that's just not going to happen." Small town, it's going to happen, but for them, they're like, that's out of the realm of possibility. I said, "Well, did you have anybody visiting that had a baby?" And she was just like, "No, we were out of town and we were doing this or that." And I was like, "Okay, all right, just asking because we were there and we heard a baby." She was like, "Yeah, no, wasn't us." I was like, "Okay, well, moving on." For me, just moving on. And then, I have been out in the woods as well with, speaking of the sounds and whatnot. So, have you ever heard, what a Jake break is? Like
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and that sound, I don't want to try and
Mm-hmm.
imitate it, because then you lose all your listeners. But yeah, that Jake break sound of when an engine is being used to slow down the vehicle instead of just the brakes. Anyway, it's a pretty unique sound. It's pretty loud. And we were out in the woods, and we were down at the bottom of the valley. Again, I think we were clearing some brush out, or getting something set up, but nobody else was out there. We were the only road in and the only road out. There was nobody in the nearby valleys or anything like that. Think of being up on top of some of these valleys and small mountains, and you can see where other logging outfits are, where they're getting started, and that type of stuff. And for where we were at, there was a good 2 or 3 valleys that you could see, kind of sort of at. And that there was no logging in that particular area. And for us, we had already had a landing. We had a lot of the trees already cut down, and I can't remember what we were setting up. We might have just been getting set up for all the cable work. But I heard a Jake brake going off, and we're down in the lower part of the valley. And I remember thinking, what's a truck coming out here for? They're not, we're like 2-3 weeks away from using any trucks. And I remember asking my buddy, I was like, "Do you hear that?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, who's coming? Do we need to go back up to the landing and tell them hey, we're not ready for you?" And he's like, "Well, no, they'll figure it out." So I hear it again, and I'm like, "Dude, how long is it going to take this truck to get to us?" Because it was a good, it should have been there by that second or third time that I heard it. And I'm just like, "Where's it coming from?" And he's like, "Well, maybe it's an echo from over the next valley or two." And I remember going up to the very top of the valley. When end of the day, I'm looking around. I'm like, from where? Even if it was an echo, it's got to go over the mountains, and it's got to come back down, and then it's got to come back and up. It just sonically, it just was not doable, right? And it was loud, like as it was coming down our particular road, and it was near us. So it was one of those mystery things. It was like, it's possible it could have been an echo, or a truck was using his Jake brake both in and out, and he pulled in without us knowing it and turned around, or anything of that nature. Entirely possible, but I don't remember seeing any trucks or tracks on the way back out. And it was just kind of one of those moments again that just kind of like, well, that's kind of quite the anomaly. And again, my friend was just like, "Well, it was an echo from somebody else relatively nearby." He was like, "Okay, well, again, moving on. Let's go home." All right. So, and then so we were out there. This happened twice there. I remember the hey, Hey, like hey you, hey all, that type of thing. So we've been out in the woods, and all of a sudden I hear if you're out in the woods and you see somebody but they can't see you, you're going to let them know that you're there so that they don't shoot you, right? Especially if it's going to be someone that might be carrying a gun, more than likely is. And if they think there's a free game coming up or an easy shot for them, then they're going to take it. So you want to let them know that, hey, this is a human approaching you, not an animal, right? So please don't shoot. So you would yell out, hey, you would whistle. You could yell out, hello, that type of stuff. Just whatever you want to do to indicate we're here. Please don't shoot, and we're coming towards you, or we're walking on by. And you can also communicate. You can yell out, hey, we're just passing through. We're going to go through the bottom of the valley. We're going to go through the top of the valley. And here's where we're going, just communication so that we don't shoot each other type of thing. So we were out there, and all of a sudden we heard this. I think it was just one or two of us, or one of my friends out there with me, and I heard this, hey. So we stopped, and we're out in the middle, again, Oregon woods. We're in the middle of nowhere. The only other people who are out there are either going to be drug dealers or hunters, unless they're lost. But generally, that didn't happen too much where we were at. So it's one of those major two. So we stopped and we answered back. We said, hey, and nothing happened after that. And then they said, hey, again. And so we responded back, said, hey, we hear you. We're over here. You can tell, I don't want to say echolocation, but by sound location, you could tell, hey, they're over in this direction, and we're yelling back so that they could tell that, hey, we're over in this direction. But somehow they knew we were there first. And so they yelled out, hey, first, right? So we just responded to let them know that we heard them and whatnot. But it just kept saying, hey. And so finally we just like, well, maybe they can't hear us because they didn't respond. We're like, hey, we're over here. Do you need help? Which direction you traveling? They never responded. All we ever heard was, hey. And that happened a good, at least twice that I remember.
I'm sorry, that trumps everything. That trumps everything. Hearing a random hey and just out in the middle of nowhere. Okay.
Yeah. Again, no other response other than hey. And I have been out in the woods where somebody has yelled out hey or hello, and we responded and we moved on. Hey, we're on top of the mountain and we're going on the other side. I've had experiences where that has happened, but those two no response hays was just again another weird little thing. We even walked towards one of them to try and figure out like, hey, maybe you can't hear us. Maybe they're in need and that type of stuff, but just never saw anything. And again, when we went back up, there's no other roads in or out, so who knows? It could have been somebody that was lost and deaf. Who knows? And they just couldn't respond. But don't know. So,
wow. Okay.
all right.
Okay. Wow. I'm telling you, that would give me that's worse than anything. Just a random hey. No thanks. No thanks.
Yeah. All right. So the adventure continues. All these random things again. You're like, dude, what? Did you not stop and think about this stuff? It's like, well,
I'm just wondering if you ever hung out with anybody that had a Bigfoot story out there. Like, because think about this, all this stuff, this isn't just happening to you. Okay. This has got to be happening to a lot of people out there. When are you going to run into somebody that says, hey man, you're never going to believe this, and shares the same kind of experiences that you were having with you?
Yeah.
That's what I can't believe.
Yeah. Well, now there is people, I didn't hang around with them. If I remember right, they were generally older than me, but there were people who mentioned that they saw Bigfoot and that type of stuff. And of course, it was the time when you didn't have your cell phone with you. You just had a gun and binoculars. So there was stories in town of people who did see a Bigfoot or claimed to have seen a Bigfoot. So there was stuff out there. But again, for me, it was like it's another animal in the woods, and I'm not too interested in being in the woods. I just have to be because I've either got the friends or it's for work type of thing. So continuing the adventure, the ignorant adventures of Gary. So one of the things we also did was we also partied out in the woods. There's a particular area called Smith River, and there's a couple of campgrounds out there, and it's outside of the local police jurisdiction. So it's either got to be county or state police who are going to show up, and they've only got so much ground that they can cover. So you when you're underage and you're doing illegal drinking activities, you go to these spots where you know you're not going to get in trouble. You got a less chance of getting caught. So I remember vividly this one time. Now this is like I won't say it's a bad, it's not a very well developed campground, but it's a state run campground. I say state run. They built the place and they occasionally come back and work on it, type of thing. So it was a multi-site location, but in between each particular site was a good maybe, I would say 10 to 20 yards, depending on where it's at, as far as you've got woods between you and the neighbor. So you got 10 yards between your neighbor on your right and 10 yards between your neighbor on your left. And generally there's woods directly behind you in one particular area. So you drive in, you drive out that same direction of that particular camp spot. So think of it like a giant horseshoe camping spot, if that helps. So we had a fire going. And it was dark out, and we're kind of in that U shape. We're kind of hanging around this. Some people are near the vehicles, and me and a couple of buddies are hanging out by the campfire, and I hear movement behind me in the woods, and so I turn around and look just to see if someone was like coming out from someone had snuck past me or gone out to relieve themselves in the woods, seeing who it was, but nobody showed up, so I thought nothing of it, and of course at night, a squirrel walking through the leaves sounds like a massive animal anyway. So, it's one of those things that I didn't hear it anymore for a good minute or two. And then I heard it again, and I turned around and I was like, my buddy asked what's going on. And I said, well, I just heard something, and it's the second time I've heard it. And he was like, yeah, it must be one of the other people in the campground. I was like, well, from that direction, there would be nobody unless they really got lost and were trying to come back to the light, but they're not. It should be obvious. We could even see the campfire lights from the other campfires through the woods, right? It shouldn't be too obvious, or it should be very obvious where to go if you're lost and which campground. Even then, you can walk in, and again, you're going to say, "Hey, coming in, I'm lost. I don't know which campground I'm in." That type of stuff. But that never happened. So I got nervous. So I moved to one side, a different side of the campfire, and next thing you know, I hear that same sound behind me. So it's now between me and the next campground over, and I turn around and look, and I can see if someone was walking through there, you would see a shadow, you would see or a silhouette, I guess would be the word, of somebody back there, but I didn't see anything. And so again, my buddy says, now what? And I said, well, whatever was over there is now over here. And they're like, well, it's a deer. I'm like, that's a pretty brave deer to be walking around a bunch of people. Not that it's unheard of, but I'm just like, that's kind of odd. So I was like, well, either way, I don't want some deer coming out from behind me with its antlers getting ready to stab me in the back. So I switch over to the other side of the campfire where my buddy is. And again, I hear the noise behind me. I'm like, dude, this thing's following me. And he's like, no, it's just circling. It's just digging around looking for stuff. And I was like, so I moved to another spot, just slightly over. And again, I hear that thing behind me. I'm like, this is creeping me out. So I go back over, sit next to my buddy. Again, the old joke is if there's two of us, one of us has got to be the dead meat. And I'm thinking the other guy is going to be a little bit moving a little bit slower than me, so I'm going to have time to escape whatever's coming after us. So, but it's not coming towards us. It's just kind of sort of circling and following me whichever side of the campfire I was on. It followed around behind me. So I couldn't figure that particular out, but. So one time, so again, I hear it and I stand up and I look and I'm like, I'm going to find out what this thing is. If it's a four-legged animal, I'm going to be able to see it through the silhouette and that type of stuff. And if it's a squirrel, then I'll hear the movement and I just won't see anything because the squirrel is going to be down on the ground or climbing up a tree or whatnot. So, I'm resolved to figure what's going on. And then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. And my buddy turns around and he says, yeah, no, it's just a couple of people walking around. I'm like, okay. So I'm looking and I said, why do they have red flashlights? I don't understand. And he says, well, I don't know. They just have red flashlights. And I'm like, that seems kind of odd. And there's two of them. And they're relatively high up. So I'm thinking it's like on their foreheads, two red lights, like an, I don't know what you would call it.
Like a minor
yeah.
red light.
Yeah, like you see, like walking around at night, you got those little headlamp type of things. So I'm thinking that's what those are. and they're kind of sort of moving, but they're not really. They're moving in sequence, or not in sequence, together. So I'm thinking maybe they're best I could maybe describe it was a boyfriend and girlfriend who were locking arms side by side, walking through the woods, so that one or the other doesn't trip or fall. Right. So that's my rationale for two red lights being about 6 foot high, maybe. Well, again, maybe 5 feet high, from what I could tell. But I just remember thinking it's kind of high for flashlights or headlamps, so they must be tall. And they were moving in unison, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And again, I remember asking my buddy, it's like, who brings out red flashlights? What are you not trying to be seen as? I think of like, you see military shows where they're in the helicopter and they turn out the lights, but they got the red light going, so that they can see that type of stuff. That's the only thing that I could think of. But I was just, again, but it was more of a glowy light than it was a beam. So there was no searching. If you were to see somebody out there, you could see flashlight moving, and you could see kind of sort of the beam where it originated and where it was hitting, right? So you could see that. But I remember distinctly seeing or thinking, why would they bring glowing type lights and not like a flashlight that you can aim and see things and stuff like that? So my buddy was just like, I don't know, they're just, people are strange. So, but anyway, so I saw that, and then finally I finally figured out that, or I told myself that it must be two people, and they're doing something in the woods. I'm not sure what it was. It could have been, two lovers in the night, but I was just like, well, they're standing up, but that type of thing. So it was, I didn't want to bug them, and a lot of people carry guns, and if they hear me approaching without a light, am I going to get shot? So I, for the most part, leave it alone, and I go sit down on another spot, and I see the two red lights eventually leave, but they go off deeper into the woods. Come to find out, apparently there's what do you call it, eye shine, and people have reported that both, I think I've heard red, yellow, and green eye shine. Think of like a cat at night, right? Yeah, that type of stuff. So that was probably the nearest that as far as like I could say that I saw something in the woods, that type of thing, and I saw those eye shines. So, and again, people in the woods, for me, it was just like, well, people in the woods with red lamps for whatever reason. All right, hand me another beer, right? We'll
Well, and I will tell you, like those two red lights are, I mean, that's something I've experienced. I've experienced it with other, when I experienced it, there were other people, and I was with a very, Amy Boo, who was, a really well-known researcher and investigator of Bigfoot. So she was stumped too, but the fact that she saw them while I was seeing them made me feel a little bit better.
right.
Not totally better, because I'm like you, like, what is there two red lights doing out there? And, the first thing you do is search for a rational explanation. Like, I mean, I actually thought that, we're in the middle of the night of the woods, that there might be a reflector on a tree. Like, why is there a reflector on a tree? And why would it be shining, and why would there be two of them side by side on trees, and they would just be glowing red, like really red? Like, but that was how I was trying to rationalize it, which just sounds stupid to think that that's what it is. So I totally, look, I know you're beating yourself up after all these years, but that's what seems to happen. Everybody has these experiences, and they want to put them in a box that they know.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't fit.
Yeah. All right. So I got two more, and possible a bonus story for you too from where I'm living now, but it's unrelated to Bigfoot as far as I know. But logging, we're up on top of the landing, and we're looking out, and we could see across the valley. It's a good, I would say, as the crow flies, it's a mile across, but we can see it's already been harvested. So you got nothing but stumps and debris and whatnot over there. And my older brother, I remember he was sitting there looking at it, and he's like, "You happen to have any binoculars with you?" He's asking me. He's the outdoorsman, and he's asking me if I have binoculars. I'm like, "No." And he was kind of disappointed. He was like, "Man, I wish I'd have brought my rifle." And so I'm looking out, and I'm like, "Well, why?" And he points out across. He says, "Look about midway up." He said, "You'll give it just a second. You'll see it moving." And all of a sudden, I see this brownish black spot just start making leaps and bounds, going. It would be my lower left to my upper, or yeah, my lower right to my upper left in direction from where I'm looking at it. But it is a massive amount of ground to cover, and still had more to go. So I would maybe guess 500 yards from where I saw it to the tree line of where it was headed. But this thing was moving. We're talking so fast. We're a couple of seconds to cover that ground, steep ground, nothing but trees or stumps and tree debris and whatnot, probably loose ground as well. But this thing, I couldn't tell exactly what it was. For me, it just looked like this brown blob that you kind of sort of see some movement the way it moved. The best I could describe it for you is kind of like an inchworm. You know how an inchworm kind of moves. It kind of had that feel of, like it's bending of some nature. And so I was like, "Well, what is it?" I said, "Is it a bear?" And my brother's like, "I don't think so. If it is, it's a really big one because we can see it from with our naked eye from so far away." And so we sat there and watched it. I don't know if I did ask him about that because, for me, again, I'm just looking at a giant bear going across trying to climb up the valley. But this thing was moving. So if it was an elk, it definitely was not moving. It still could move that particular way. From what I've seen them climbing, and then the way that they could jump as well, going up a hill, it could have been, I don't think it was a deer because it was too dark. But if anything, it might have been maybe a moose, maybe an elk that was really dark. But and again, maybe possibly a really large bear. Now we don't have grizzlies in there, but it wouldn't be unheard of for them to come too far down if the right circumstances happen, right? So coming down from Canada, that type of thing, or but whatever this animal was, it was big, and it was moving like nobody's business, and nothing was going to stop it. It could be anything, but the way that this thing moved, and the speed and the agility that this thing could move that fast, most bears that I have seen run are pretty quick off the draw, but they don't sustain a whole lot of they're not long distance runners, like they're sprinters, but they're not going to go that fast for that long of a time frame. So whatever that was, again, a weirdness out of the woods. Even my brother was like, he wanted it because now he's a hunter, right? So now he knows that there's an animal he could possibly go harvest, whether it be whichever one it was, or whatever season potentially it might be in. So that was that one, and I will give you my big one for the day because this is going to be really weird. So there's when you go prep a site to be harvested or logged, you'll send a cutter out there, maybe a cutter or two, depends. But you don't want to send one person out there. You send at least two for safety's sake. And one person is going to be like the cutter; they're going to be the faller. And then the other person is going to be just kind of a helper. So we call it a packer. So I'm packing. I'm not the cutter because I wasn't experienced. And again, for me, I'm not a woodsman. But I'm packing his gas for him. I'm packing his lunch for him. I'm packing the axe, and I'm packing, extra water, that type of stuff. So I'm just kind of a tag.
So you really are. It's not just a clever name. You're really just packing stuff.
Yep, you're packing it.
Really just packing stuff.
You're the mule, right? So that way, all that he has to carry, and even then, sometimes when you're walking back out, sometimes you're carrying his chainsaw for him too. So you've got everything, and he's just pretty much he's the skilled labor, and you want to get him as much as possible, cutting as many trees and not wearing him out. So the more of a brunt that you can take for him, the better. The more trees you can cut in a shorter amount of time, type of thing. So yeah, overall it was a fun job. And there's one particular guy we had gone down, we'd cleared a trail on the way down, and this is one of those, half a mile down, half a mile up type of thing against steep terrain and brush and whatnot. So we were coming back up for the day, and we had stopped and to take a breath, and we're just sitting there, and I remember it didn't dawn on me. We'd been there for a minute or two, and then it dawns on me. I'm looking at this tree, that has hair on it. So we're think of like the closest I've never seen gorilla hair, but think of like a really coarse dog, long-haired dog, right? It's not fluffy or anything like that, but it's just really coarse hair. But it's literally, it's not, you can't see the bark of the tree, and it goes all the way from the base of the tree all the way up into the canopy, which is about, if I remember right, 7-8 feet up in, which would be the ceiling, the lowest couple of branches type of thing from where we were at. So you can't see anything above that because you got it's really dense right in there, and you couldn't see anything above that particular the I guess it would be the base of the tree canopy. I remember looking at this tree and I'm thinking, I have never seen that before in my life. A couple years of being out in the woods all this time, never seen that before. And so I'm just kind of eyeballing a little bit, and the cutter, he's not paying attention. He's just kind of taking a breath, kind of staring off into space. And I got his attention. I said, "What?" And it's right next to another tree that has nothing on it, and you can see all the bark, and you can see all the limbs, and you can see whatever. And it's maybe the distance between the next tree over was maybe 12 inches, at 12 inches at most. It was two trees going about the same size. Visually wise, if you can see it, like most people, I could have put my arms all the way around it. I'm not a very big guy, but it's a good couple of feet in circumference. So maybe 2-3 feet wide type of thing. But it was literally covered with this hairy like stuff. The closest I can describe it maybe is dog hair, right? I've looked it up before, especially because I've been listening to all these podcasts, and I'm like, well, I remember this one particular instance where that just, I've never seen it before, never seen it again. And I remember pointing out to the cutter, and I said, "What's up with this tree?" And he says it's a fungus, or I think he said fungus. Yeah, I think he said fungus. And I was just like, well, that's kind of odd, because I'm looking around at all the other trees that, again, I couldn't even tell you what type of tree it was. Because I couldn't see the bark and I couldn't see the limbs up top, because all the other trees that had limbs interacting with that particular area, I couldn't see anything. So for me, it was brown like a cedar tree. If you've ever been up close to a cedar tree in the Oregon coast. But it was just like, again, for me, I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. Never seen it before, never seen it since. None of the other trees were affected. Like there wasn't even hints of it growing, think of like a vine. The other day, for my particular area where I'm living now, I went around and had to trim off all the vines that were growing up the tree. There wasn't, some of them were fully covered. Some of them were only half covered, that type of stuff. But the vines were definitely going in there. But for this particular instance, there was no hair on any other tree. There was nothing. There wasn't like little spots. There wasn't like little wisps of hair or anything of that nature. I just remember it standing out really, really well to me. And so anyway, we moved on, right? And because ultimately we're going to come back and we're going to cut it down anyway. And I would just like to see what type of tree it was. Sometimes you can see when you're at the top of the landing, you can look back down to where you were, and you can kind of see, if there was a fir tree, a particularly tall pine tree, an alder, anything of that nature, you can kind of see where you might have stopped and that type of stuff. And I remember looking back down, and I didn't see any particular trees that stood out and that would identify where we had stopped, because from the ground view you can't see a whole lot. So to this day, I remember we occasionally went, when we would go back down that trail to get to the bottom or coming back up, I don't ever remember seeing that tree ever again. I remember trying to find it on the way back down so that I could ask my other friends what type of moss or fungus this particular was, so that I could describe it for them better and maybe pull off a section of it. And one of my friends had his dad was a science teacher at the local school, and I thought maybe I could bring it to them and they could identify it. We also had biologists, that we knew that were teachers that we could bring it to and stuff like that. But I always thought, well, maybe I just missed it on the way down. I couldn't find it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention and I missed it on the way down, or coming back up. Your legs are burning, you're sucking wind, and you get distracted and you missed it again. So, but to this day, even after cutting that whole plot of land, I don't ever remember cutting down that tree or watching that tree get cut. So, I'll leave it to you as to what happened. and what that possibly was. But all I know is I vividly remember looking for it and never finding it again.
So while I've heard oh boy, how close were you to that? And I'm using my air quotes, tree. How close were you to that the first time you saw it?
The first time I saw it, I was about maybe 3-4 feet away. And then, of course, I got close enough to it where if I wanted to touch it, I wasn't gonna because it looked weird. But yeah, I could get my face right up to it if I remember looking at it, because I remember thinking, like, what exactly is it? Is it hair? Is it like pine needles? You know, what's going on with this particular stuff? But yeah, I got my face right up to it.
Yikes! So I mean, so you've had time to think about it. I know what you think it was. Do you want to tell everybody, all of our listeners, what you think it was? I mean, because I almost drove off the road when you told me what you thought.
So I think it was a Bigfoot. I don't know,
You,
I know the shapes and stuff like that, but how tall this thing was, it went up into the canopy. So, I couldn't see anything other than basically what I was looking at. So it maybe I maybe two legs together, and I couldn't tell because of how hairy it was. Maybe it was one leg, who knows? But I definitely think it was an animal, because again, it was never there after that.
and so it was big enough up into the tree that you couldn't see its like head and stuff. That's what
Right.
you're saying, right?
Right. So yeah, if
just
it had limbs or any frame or anything like that, yeah, I just had basically think of a tree. Like I couldn't see if it had shoulders or anything like that. There was too many limbs and whatnot up in there.
wow. Now, how does that make you? How does that make you feel? Like after all these years, to think that you were that possibly. I mean, because this is just what you think and what I can only surmise. But what else could it be? Like to be that close, so close yet so far.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I'm saying?
and for me, part of the skeptic in me as well, if you Google hairy trees, right, you're going to get moss. You're going to get like Spanish moss. If you get enough Spanish moss on a tree,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't even come close to what I saw. Like I can't find anything on Google as far as I can know. If your viewers or your listeners want to go Google it and they want to find something, I'd be happy to respond back and say, nope, hey, that's close, but I'm happy to do that. But I've Googled images of hairy trees, fungus on trees, that type of stuff, and I've never seen anything like that out there. So.
Now, the person you were with, have you ever talked to them again about it?
No. Again, a nice guy, but very quiet, and I don't think he probably wouldn't have remembered anyway. Honestly, I don't even remember the guy's name. I just remember he was super nice, good worker, all that fun stuff, but never talked much. But I'd have to ask my brother. I think we were working for my brother at the time. I'd have to ask him some of the people that I had gone packing for.
I just imagine when you stopped working there, all these guys getting around going, man, you know how close he was to finding our Bigfoot that we got running around out here? Like, thank God he could have blown our cover.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, and so because if you've got a story that's even a bonus after this, then I can't wait to hear what the bonus is. But like, at what point? So did you always, like, once you left Oregon? I think did you say you left in your 20s, right? And or at least stopped working out in the woods in your 20s at some point, right?
Yeah, late 20s.
Oh, okay, so like, at what point did you? Because I know podcasts really have, last 8 or 9 years or whatever, have really kind of taken off and opened up the ability for people to share their experiences. But I mean, up until that point, when you did start listening to podcasts and trying to satisfy your interest in that subject, did you do any, did you read books? Did you try to watch shows, or did you just not think anything was going on until you stumbled upon a podcast and started hearing about similar instances?
Yeah, so this is only over the last year that I've taken up podcasts and listening to like paranormal, weird things in the woods, that type of stuff, which is what attracted me to your guys' stuff. It was from the shadows. So it's not, specific, but it piqued my interest. It was just kind of like, because I can't really pin a lot of this stuff on one particular thing. I mean, for the most part, it sounds mostly like Bigfoot type stuff. But no, it's only been in like the last year that that I've kind of been listening and recalling a lot of this stuff. But no, now my family makes fun of me because now I bought an SUV that looks like every other SUV on the road. And I wanted something to distinguish it from the back, because they all, walking down the parking lot aisle, parking lots, they all look the same. So I went out and I was like, well, I need something unique and identifying on there. So I went and got a Bigfoot sticker and stuck it on the back. So that's about as close as I've come. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. And I know if, since you're a loyal listener, we got some people where you're living now that not too far away that have some serious Bigfoot sightings going on. So you never know. Keep your eyes and ears open for a Bigfoot in your area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which also, so this little bonus area. So I'm in Atlanta. The house that we bought when we first bought it, this would be good 10, 15 years now. When we first bought the house, I live again. It's not really in the woods, but we're kind of out on the outskirts of, I'd say the suburbs, but like literally there's woods in my backyard. It's a small forest. But there's other houses that kind of wrap around a little bit in there. But there's enough woods that if an animal wants to, and there are deer that walk through my yard, and they'll come from the other side of the street. So there's some lakes and stuff like that as well around near me, that you could walk if you wanted to, maybe cross a couple of roads. You could get into, you do it all stealthily through the woods, and not be seen if you wanted to. So when we first moved here, I got a couple of islands, and I got about a quarter acre, or I'm sorry, 3/4 of an acre. And I've got one section that's got what I call a tree island, where there's like 2 trees, and then we just kind of mow around it, and it got some bushes in there and that type of stuff. So we had first couple of maybe 2 years worth. When I'd mow the lawn, I'd go out there and we'd have to pick up the giant sticks and whatnot. And there was these 2 granite chunks of rock, probably about 7-8 pounds each. And they would always end up in the middle of the yard or somewhere outside of where I put them last. So I picked them up, because you don't want to run over it with the lawnmower. So I put them in the little bushy area in the tree island, and then I'd mow the lawn. And then sometime, next Friday, mow it on Friday. I come back and mow it, go through the yard again. Those rocks were outside of where I put them last, and they were back in the yard in some different place. And so and my thought was, well, there's like a raccoon or something like that that's flipping these things around looking for grubs or snakes or something of that nature that keeps moving it. So I would put it back in the island, come back next Friday to mow the lawn, and I would find them rocks in my yard again. And so I'm thinking my own kids are messing with me because they know that I'm going to have to move them rocks. And I think that they're getting a good old laugh out of me. So I finally, I took them down to the lower part of the yard and kind of threw them off into slightly part of the woods a little bit. And they moved from there as well. Every time I would go to clean up all the debris before I started mowing, they would be back in the green grass of my yard. Until one time, and this went on, I would say, for 2 years. And I'm thinking my kids have got the longest running joke ever. And even then, the neighbor kids, there's no little kids around, or there's no high schoolers or anything of that nature in our particular area at the time. So I was just like, what type of animal is seeking out these rocks and moving them back into the yard. Is it trying to build something? What's going on? It was just really super weird until one day I finally, just after maybe 2 years of this, I finally took one of the rocks and I heaved it so far into the woods that it can't be flipped back into my particular yard. And then one I kind of heaved a little bit, but it got all cattywampus, didn't go too far into the yard. But those rocks never came back after that. So apparently, again, Sasquatch has been known to, I don't want to say communicate, but put rocks in places that they shouldn't be, as an indicator, like, hey, are you smart enough to notice this as well? Are you another animal that we can deal with? But anyway, so that's my little, even here in the Atlanta area, just little weird things were happening until I think it was when I finally chucked it into way off into the woods that, number one, they were like, okay, this guy's not playing the game anymore. So that was just super weird for me.
Gary, I hate to say this, but I kind of hope when you go out to mow the next time, they're sitting out there in the yard. I just gotta be honest. I kind of hope they are. Holy smokes! Well, I'll tell you what, Gary. I am glad that that you were persistent and got a hold of us, because I mean, this is it. That was a great collection of, how do you say it? It's like, if the judge was here, he might say that's all circumstantial evidence, but put all together, I mean, that adds up to quite a few experience. I mean, what else could they be? Like we said, you start adding that stuff up together, especially the stuff in the beginning that all happened in the same area. What else could you be experiencing? And then just to think that you were so close to what may or may not have been a Sasquatch just standing there silent, trying to, I mean, that's the worst way to hide, right? And that close our eyes and nobody can see us. Like, is that, you think that's what he was doing? Like, he's not going to see me. He's not going to see me. That's.
Yeah. Well, I think also that's part of their stealth as well, is that they can hold themselves so still that you don't notice them and that you'll keep moving on.
Yeah, because he probably just was pretty much camouflaged in with the rest of the nature that was there, even though he was in between, or it was in between trees. Wow. Well, I'm glad that hey, number one, I'm glad that you are a listener of ours and that you enjoy the program. I'm glad we got to have you on, and I'm hoping that the same as you listening to other people tell about their experiences, that maybe somebody will hear you then tell about your experiences and say, hey, I had that happen to me too. I didn't think anything about it, So I hope that you now have your chance to help some other people come forward and kind of relate some things that happened to them and maybe find some answers, and I'm sure you don't feel like you've really found any answers, but maybe at least you know where to look,
Yeah, at the very least, and I know it's all circumstantial, and there might be some natural explanations for a lot of what happened, but either way, like, how many outdoorsmen could say that they've experienced some of that type of stuff as well? As much as they're out in the woods, as much as I did not want to be, and yet I still had those types of experiences. So, but yeah, I would also encourage your listeners. It doesn't matter if people think you're crazy or not, because at the end of the day, it's just you and nobody else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For me, like, I don't care what you think of me. I've had too many near-death experiences to be concerned about what you think about me. So, but those are stories for a different day, I guess.
Now, before we let you go, I just want to know, I mean, is this something that you would like to, at some point, go out and maybe try to see if you can find some more evidence, or maybe have another experience, or are you good?
I could probably maybe do an excursion. I don't know. My wife laughs at me, because for me, an excursion is going to a Holiday Inn and then going out into the woods and then coming back. Right.
A man after my own heart. Yes, a man
yeah.
after.
which drives her crazy because she grew up camping, and the only type of camping I did involved alcohol. So, so, but yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't think I see myself becoming like a full-time investigator or anything of that nature. But if somebody's putting something together and they want to have some hack job city boy tagging along with them, then I could probably do that. Yeah.
Hey, look, you say hack job, but I fill out your resume with all your experiences, and suddenly you look like the man for the job instead of a hack job. So well, Gary, hey, thank you, Gary, for coming on and sharing your experiences with us. And I hope that, like I said, I hope somebody else hears this and feels compelled to reach out and share some of their experiences. And I hope that some measure you feel good about just telling them. I hope it feels kind of good. Despite a lifetime of non-believers in your life, apparently.
Well, now I'm going to have a whole lot more new ones, especially when I share this after this post. When I share it, then I'll have a whole bunch of new Facebook friends that'll I'm sure the memes will fly after this.
That's okay. Be strong, my friend. Be strong. So, all right, Gary. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, boss. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.
Sure, you've played scratch-offs, but you haven't played anything like our newest $20 Ohio Lottery scratch-offs. Here's Mega Cash with a $500 instant prize and minimum payouts of at least $30. And Magnificent Millions, which has over $58 million in total prizes. Both scratch-offs have a whopping $2 million top prize. So play Mega Cash and Magnificent Millions from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
So I used the savings from switching to Progressive 30 years ago to buy tickets to the championship game. Between those two teams that didn't exist 30 years ago. Yeah, I'm a big Alaska Palm Trees fan. Which is a team now? In the future?
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.